People of the internet, we're back for video number 2. If you tuned in and watched the inaugural video for the channel, you know that we just received this Canadian Special Edition Glock 19. And if you're like me and you've been waiting months for a pistol that was still in production, you have undoubtedly Googled every accessory you could possibly add. And today we're going to talk about one of those accessories. If you click the link to get here, you already know what it's about. We're talking about lighting, and specifically weapon-mounted lights. Does everyone need a weapon-mounted light? Obviously not. It depends on your application, where you shoot, what you're doing. In Canada, good chance you're shooting at a range. If you're not a professional using these for law enforcement purpose, then your range may or may not have lighting. You may need to provide your own lighting depending on your situation. That's up to you. If you're in another country, say the United States, that allows you to carry a pistol like this for defensive purposes, and you're walking down the proverbial dark alley and encounter a dangerous situation, then you want to be able to illuminate what's around you. Some people choose to do that using a tactical flashlight, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is a Phoenix PD32. It would be a good choice for something like that, small enough that you could carry it around if you're carrying a pistol, or take to the range and operate with your support hand while shooting with your dominant hand. Something I'd recommend considering if you're going to get a light for this purpose, get something with a tail clicky switch so that you can operate it from the back while maintaining whatever grip you're going to use. I'll let the pros show you how to do that. If you look on YouTube, I'm sure you can find some demonstrations on how to properly shoot with a handheld flashlight. This is my backup light from work. I don't use a weapon-mounted light at work, so I've got to have other illumination options. The Phoenix has always been a good one, something to consider if you want to go that route. But let's say you're a gearholic like myself, and you've decided you just absolutely must buy a weapon-mounted light. Something like the TLR-1S, which lives on my Smith & Wesson M&P. I've had this for a few years. It's a great light. Streamlight makes quality products. I believe this runs in the order of about 300 lumens, which isn't the only measure for a light, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. The method of activation is a little bit different than what you'll see on the light that we'll feature today. This light uses paddles to operate, so one direction will allow momentary use, one will use constant, and if you've got great dexterity and you're not in a highly stressful situation and you bump twice, you can get strobe action, just for extra fanciness at the range. Form factor, you can see, is quite large. This is a big light. Even for a full-size pistol, it protrudes way past the muzzle, and it means you're going to get some fouling on it. You're going to have to clean it. You might knock it into stuff. Any holsters that you buy that will fit this light will be longer than the gun, so you're adding a little bit of bulk there. Might not be an ideal application. I have no issues with this light. I like it. I will continue to use it on the M&P. I'll even show you on something larger like Sig Sauer P250. And this may not be set up with the best adapter for the P250. You can see it's quite far forward of the trigger guard. The protrusion isn't quite as bad. This is a much larger framed pistol. Might suit this gun a little bit better. But all in all, it's a good light, just not what I'm looking for on a compact pistol. You'll see that some guys, when they're creating these abhorrent roll-in specials out of Glock 19s, are putting these kinds of lights on the Glock 19s, and that's just silly in my mind. I mean, all the power to you if you want to do it, but not my ideal situation. If you want to run a Glock 19 and throw a giant compensator on the end to extend the barrel, add extended mags for more capacity, run an optic, and a huge light dangling off the front, why didn't you just get a Glock 17? You can get a compensated Glock 17 with a slide cut, and the capacity is higher. So why are you messing around with a 19 and then making it bigger? I don't understand. Anyway, again, I digress. Not for me, but maybe for some people. So what do you do if you have a compact gun and you want to leave it as a compact gun? Well, you get a compact light. And this one, which I have acquired from Rampart Corporation, is an INFORCE APlc for the Glock. This is the 3rd generation, I think, APL. I think this one has some different texturing and maybe slightly different coloration than previous lights. But the nice thing is they have developed these. Let's just start with the useless parts. We've developed these to fit a compact pistol. And let's keep in mind, this is not an apples to apples comparison. Obviously the TLR1S is made for a full-size pistol. The INFORCE APLc is made for a compact. So your apples to oranges here. But there are some features we can compare and contrast and have a different discussion here about options for a light. So looking first of all at activation, we talked a little bit about the TLR1S and how it activates using this rotating paddle system. The INFORCE uses a pad system which pushes in. And I think this comes locked out. So let's just screw that in. And there you are, the pad system. So much like the TLR1S offers momentary and constant by going in different directions with the paddles, this has actually got an intelligent system where if you click once, light is on, click again, light is off. If you hold and then release, this switch will sense that it's been longer than a click and will switch to momentary mode. And as soon as you release, it's off, which is a nice feature. It means that if you're panicking because you're in a dangerous situation or you're not thinking about it and you want your light on, you're holding it, and then when you release it, it's going to shut off. Alternatively, if you want it on all the time, you're just going to click it like you would any flashlight and it's going to stay on until you click it again. So slightly similar in that they both offer those features, but a little bit different mode of activation. And I saw a YouTube reviewer looking at the INFORCE previously and comparing it to a Surefire, I think an XC1. And he made the comment that pushing on a button sideways had a tendency to move his muzzle. And every time he did it, he would, and he said he was doing it, you know, to illustrate, so he was emphasizing it. Every time he'd activate the light, he'd push the muzzle over. And then he pulled out the XC1 and said, well, see, this one has the rotating paddles, and so it doesn't do it. And then he would activate the light, and if you were watching, his muzzle moved every time he activated the light. And I just failed to see how there was any difference there. Both of them probably would have caused the same situation. If you're a good shooter and you know what you're doing, very good chance that you could activate this pistol without moving too far off target. And by the time your finger is on the trigger, you're going to have your sights lined up again. So although I've seen some YouTube reviewers out there talk about the paddles moving muzzles, not something that I would overly concern yourself with. So I have to say the texture on here is really nice. Might be hard for the camera to pick up, but it's just rough enough that you can feel it. And the click is a very tactile click on and off. I don't know if you can hear that. I will do an install here really quickly. And just like that, the light is in the pistol. In case I skip through that because it's long and boring, basically you remove this bolt and slide the light on and reinstall the bolt and tighten it down with a flathead screwdriver. People have commented that it's a bit difficult to line everything up perfectly because you can't just seat it all the way on as far as you want. It has to come a little bit forward of the fully seated position. So it just takes a little bit of messing around with, but something to consider. If you're going to remove light from the gun constantly and be reinstalling on other guns, you might decide that you want to go with something more like the Streamlight, which has a tensioner that you can back out and then a spring-loaded mechanism that allows you to remove it from a rail and put it back on. So if you're going to be switching several guns while you're at the range, then this might be an option for you. Obviously the APLc Glock version is made just for Glock pistols, so you're probably not going to be switching this to other guns unless you have several Glocks that you want to use it with. But again, a different feature. The INFORCE does have a lockout, so if you unscrew it slightly, it will not function. Once you screw it in, it does function. The Streamlight does not. Battery changes. The INFORCE can have the battery changed while still mounted to the gun, simply by removing this cap. There's a CR2 cell inside, pops out, pop a new one in, screw the cap back on. The whole light assembly basically is removed in that process. The TLR1S is a bit of a different situation. So again, these are not apples to apples comparisons, but if you are looking at lights, these might be something to consider. You have to remove this light from the gun in order to change the batteries. One good reason for the quick release, actually, because if you need to change them in a hurry, you're going to be messing around taking it off the gun, and then you've got to reinstall it. So different things to consider here. Okay guys, just a quick demonstration here of the beam patterns of the 3 lights we're looking at today. Again, not a direct comparison because we're talking about one handheld, 2 weapon lights. They've all got different amounts of lumens, but I'll show you sort of some of the things to consider if you're picking out a light for yourself and why it's important to consider your application. So starting with the handheld Phoenix PD32, which is in turbo mode here at 340 lumens. Really bright hotspot, illuminating our first ever guest star on the YouTube channel for Lost Ark. That's Silhouette Steve down there, and Steve is lit up nice and bright. You can see that the whole wall basically that he's on is lit up. Just to give you an idea of lumen output here, let's jump down to low mode. That's 5 lumens, you can just barely make them out. Jumps up to 70 lumens for the low power or mid power. 135 is the high, and 340 is the turbo. So this light's going to give you lots of penetration, very adaptable because it's got the different modes, but not something you necessarily want to fiddle with. If you're using it for weapon light, you're probably going to leave it on high in case you ever need it and just go ahead and activate it. Sometimes too many features can be a detriment. But let's compare the PD32 with the Streamlight TLR1S. You can see fairly similar actually. The PD35 is obviously a bit brighter, it's got a higher lumen rating, and it's also got a much more defined hotspot. The camera may not translate this perfectly, but if you're standing in the room with me, you would see that the PD32 outputs a very distinct hotspot. It's circular, and around it is just sort of a light spill of light, whereas the TLR1S does have a great hotspot, and then it fades gradually into the spill and the flood. So not as probably great of a distance because the reflector hasn't been designed to focus as much into one specific zone, so you're not going to get out into the darkness as far as the handheld. But still, you can see that Silhouette Steve is lit up nice and bright. Again, the periphery, the wall around is lit up. You could see any other threats or any other targets that you're shooting at. And if we compare finally to the INFORCE APLc, you'll see not as bright, so 200 lumens for the APLc versus 300 lumens on the TLR1S. Again, not as bright a hotspot, so you can now probably make out on the TLR1S a very well-defined circle as opposed to more of a fading circle from the INFORCE APLc. So if I shut off the TLR1S and we just look at the APLc, again, you'll see that Steve is nice and bright. The whole wall again around Steve might be hard for the camera to pick up, but is still lit up, and I can assess any targets or any threats that would be around. So think about your applications, think about what you're going to use it for. Try and pick something that is from a trusted brand, Streamlight, Surefire, INFORCE. There are others out there, I just can't think of them all. But buy something that's within your price range from a reputable manufacturer that gives you the features that you need. A little bit of power, a fairly decent hotspot at whatever range you're going to be at, and something that you will enjoy and use and like the operation of. I like the way the INFORCE looks on this pistol. I like how it operates with the paddles. I'm going to be probably very happy with this, and if I'm not, there'll be a video that talks about it. Thanks for tuning in. Please throw me a like and a subscribe, and that will make sure that you see all the videos that are coming out soon. Thanks again.